One of them. So, gentlemen, you are both so welcome here this afternoon. Thank you for joining us in Good Conversations. Show them some love. Let them feel happy that they came. I've told them that there may be some questions that you have arising from the conversations that have taken place already today. We'll just wait and see. But if I can, we'll just go along this way first of all. Tell us a bit briefly about yourselves, especially why on earth would you do a job like being an MLA in Belfast, Northern Ireland, one of the most contested spaces. I think we've got functioning government back again, but a considerable amount of the last 7 years we haven't even had functioning government. Why would anybody want to step into that? Bit about yourselves.
Okay, so my name is Peter McReynolds, Alliance MLA for East Belfast, and thanks for having me along today. Not what I expected at 9 a.m. this morning, but I think all MLA's phones are going pretty early these days. I got involved in politics about 10 years or so ago. I studied French linguistics in university, spent a lot of my time just gallivanting around France, drinking wine, eating cheese, just having a nice time. Wasn't very political in school, and came back from France after a couple of years and threw my time into studying for a human rights law master's at Queen's. Did really well, but because of the financial crash, I couldn't get a job anywhere. Shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with MS and thought I don't want to be gallivanting around Europe, which is always the dream. I'm going to sort of just lay my foundations here in Belfast and focus on that. Sort of volunteering quite a lot, building upon the human rights law masters and building up experience that way. So it's always something that I've been really passionate about. And one of the roles that I had was a volunteer up in Stormont, which kind of got me a bit more politically aware of what was going on, because obviously being diagnosed with MS, that was the first time I started to see the dysfunction within the health system that we have here. So at the age of about 26, I think I was, that was my first sort of upfront direct contact with the dysfunction that was going on. So involved with the Alliance Party thereafter. Really fortunate to work alongside Naomi, who was Deputy Lord Mayor in Belfast City Council when I was a councillor there, and I was elected in May 2022 to the Assembly. Not really on my trajectory or career path, to be honest. I think politics is like that. It's not a 9 to 5. It's not something that you can plan and everything goes your way. A lot of it is just circumstances and as they happen to you around you and what your experience is with that. But been really strange saying this now actually, but really quite excited to be involved in politics. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for Northern Ireland, and I think we need people there who think outside the box and are keen to represent the younger voices, because you guys really are the future of Northern Ireland. So it's important to have people up there that care about this place and really want to make it work, and I'm one of those people, so that's why I'll continue to be involved.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much, Colm.
Thank you, Jules, and thank you for the invite today. I have to say, really delighted about it because, and I mean this very sincerely, the best part for me of being an MLA is meeting with young people, just in terms of new ideas, open-mindedness, all of that. My own background is maybe a bit the opposite of Peter's in the sense that I've been kind of immersed in politics probably all of my life. In fact, and I make this point to annoy some of my own family since even before I was born, in the sense that my grandmother would have been the person in our community, which is a mixed community, and this would have been a strong feature of it, but my mother was the person in our community in the 50s and 60s who filled out forms for people, who kind of, fought wee local campaigns to get street lighting into different parts of it and one thing and another. A major issue in the Brantry, which is a wee small country area where I come from, was lack of housing. In particular for nationalist families, and of course this was in the late 60s when there was all the issues around allocation of housing. My aunt had applied for a house in Caledon. My granny had actually tried to get houses built in the Brantry, and the local council said we won't do that because we don't believe anybody in the Brantry works. That was the first problem. As they seen it, it wasn't true. But they said, we'll build them in Caledon, which is a small village now. The time when I did politics A-level myself, and at that time the Caledon eviction or the Caledon squatting was part of the curriculum. Not sure if it is now. The local council agreed that they would build houses in Caledon and they would allocate those houses, 15 houses, they would allocate them out, eight to unionist background families and 7 to what were seen as nationalist families. On the night of the allocation of the council, the local councillor from Caledon Village, who was a unionist, as a result of the gerrymandering of the area rather than a straight vote, arrived to the council meeting with a A4 page with 18 names that he had decided to allocate the 18 houses to. Out of those 18 names, 17 of them were straightforward unionist. The one person who was from a nationalist background had been a serviceman, had joined the British Army and served in the British Army, therefore was entitled to a house and was almost seen as safe in a sense, in that he wasn't, if he's from a nationalist background, he likely wasn't a Republican, having served in the British Army. So effectively, none of the houses went to Catholics. My granny, who was also involved in the local Republican club, as they were at that time, Sinn Féin were outlawed, they were a local Republican club, had been working this campaign. They were met with a fait accompli. They regrouped to see what they would do, and they decided they would squat in 5 or 6 of the houses. On the night, they went that night to the houses. Only 2 of the families turned up, our own family and the McKenna family, squatted in the houses, were eventually evicted violently. My godmother, who was also my aunt, and my granny were in the house on the day the eviction took place. Now, the house that she had squatted in, my aunt had 3 children, was married with 3 young children. The house was given to a young Protestant girl who was 19 years old, a single girl. That's the house they squatted in. On the morning of the eviction, the 19-year-old girl, who was Emily Beattie, brother, who was a policeman, turned up in civilian clothes with 8 or 10 policemen. They went into the house, they smashed every piece of furniture in the house, and then they dragged my mother, my granny, and my godmother. My mother was expecting me at the time, out of the house. So I suppose in that sense, we would always have received a negative attention from police and all of that there as a result of that. But we also still were, my mother kind of inherited my granny's role as the person who done farmers' farms and all of that there. Throughout my life then, I was acutely aware of that discrimination, acutely aware of the presence of security forces in our area, stopping people and all of that. And I suppose, became involved in politics from a young age. The first meeting I attended was 14. I joined Sinn Féin at 14 years old. And I then became very much community. I was also running, after my own A-levels, I went into a family business and I became involved in a lot of community projects. Ran the business for a number of years. In later years, about 10 years ago, I then went back into education, did a social work degree, and obtained a job as a social worker. And while I was doing that, I was approached by the party, would I take a co-option into the Assembly? And I weighed it up long and hard, because I've been in politics, but not in elected politics. I weighed it up very long and hard, but I eventually came to the conclusion that if I didn't give it a go and see if I could do something or change something or play a role in that sense, I would look back and regret it. So I decided to take part in it then. As a result of my experience in the health system, Sinn Féin asked me, would I take on a health portfolio? And when the Assembly was reconstituted back in whatever year that was, then I was asked to be chair of the health committee. And I have to say, I had a fantastic experience in that, working with right across the entire party spectrum, DUP, Alliance, SDLP, UUP, working with people in the Assembly. And I have to say, I absolutely believe I made the right decision, even though it's been difficult. And it's difficult when people say when he's going back to work, despite the fact that it is quite a lot of work all the time. But I understand what they mean when they say that. But despite the ups and downs, I firmly believe the only way we will move forward here is if we work together, respect each other, work on the basis of us all being equal with each other. I think we can only but do good for our communities, our society, our country, and that's entirely up to, we have obviously different perspectives on that, but to me, fundamentally, we all share this place, we all have similar needs, our people all need the similar things, health, education, housing, jobs, and I'm quite confident that I made the right decision.
Thank you. Really interesting, Colm. In some senses, you've answered my second question already. I was going to say, why Sinn Féin? But, you know, steeped in that sort of country republicanism, that's a natural step for you. Peter, why the Alliance Party?
So I suppose firstly, I'm from a mixed marriage. My mum was a Catholic and my dad was a Protestant. And I attended a Catholic primary school and a Catholic grammar school, St Malachy's College in North Belfast. But we were raised in a kind of apolitical house. There was no real sort of values. put into us in terms of politics from just a typical working class background. And my mum really never, she always voted, I think it was the Ratepayers Party or something. She only really wanted to vote for politicians that cared about someone like her who, didn't get much government support. My dad was working in a library at the time, and she just didn't really mind about what happened in terms of, Northern Ireland, is it going to become a united Ireland, is it going to stay in the UK? She never really minded about that. She just wanted to focus on the here and now, just as Colm was saying there. I think that people care about where their kids go to school, that they're able to access the health service, as I mentioned, my own story in terms of MS, and that the economy's doing okay, everything else will work itself out. So for me, it was either the Greens or the Alliance Party whenever I wanted to become more politically active. I cared about the environment. I didn't really mind about the constitutional question. It was something that never really interested me when it came up in conversation. So the Alliance Party appealed to me, given the Naomi Long was very prominent at that point, given what was going on here in East Belfast in terms of her unseating Peter Robinson back in 2010, and sort of the momentum that was behind her, the flag dispute around that time as well, something I was just chatting about this morning to one of my staff members. So that was something that I really wanted to get involved in, given the energy that she had in terms of politics. So that's why I joined Alliance, and that's why I'll continue to be in Alliance.
Okay. Thank you. Worth pointing out just at the minute that this seat here is still being kept for the DUP, who were invited, who did promise that they would be here, but for the best of me, I just can't see anybody just yet. So really thankful to the Alliance and to Sinn Féin for actually turning up. Well, one more from me, and then we'll start taking some questions there, and we might come back. Obviously, part of the reason the DUP aren't here is because it's actually been quite a week in Northern Ireland politics. I'm interested, and Colm, we'll go back to you. Does it seem like we're on the verge of a bit more healthy functioning? Are we in a new place? The health system needs serious help. Workers' pay needs serious help. Education. There's a bunch of teachers in here who I'm sure could all talk about the difficulty that education is facing at the minute. Is the sun coming up on a new day for Northern Ireland?
Well, I think there is certainly an air of optimism around, and I recognise that there may be outstanding challenges for the DUP, and those need to be worked through. But I fundamentally believe that there is a recognition across all parties, including the DUP, that really there is no alternative to working together. It's a very, very simple context. Because we live in what has been a contested space, the reconciliation out of that comes from working together. And while there are, I came to Stormont this morning from one of the picket lines in Dungannon with workers' pay. My understanding of my work in health in the health committee, we have shockingly poor public service at the present time in terms of workforce vacancies within health and social care. Public services kind of demoralised as a result of what is now 12, 13 years of Tory austerity, where wages have been year on year squeezed and squeezed and squeezed to people, and a really, really draining cost of living crisis. People are really struggling. And somebody said to me recently, I'm not sure if people are coping. And I don't think people have been fully coping for a while. I would be concerned, and I believe there's a lot of debt. I believe people are going further and further into debt because people are struggling to make ends meet. Now, on the other side of that coin, yesterday I was in Banbridge, and I know one of the schools here is Banbridge, meeting Joe Kennedy in the Game of Thrones, the new Game of Thrones Centre. Joe Kennedy, who is the American Special Economic Envoy here to the north. Now, he's a very serious guy. I've met him now 3 or 4 times here, and they are genuinely sitting there prepared and willing and keen to invest and to work here along with people. We also have, and while Brexit was not, and we have said Brexit was always going to be a bad thing for here, there is an opportunity now where we have managed to get some mitigations in terms of the European market, and there are advantages to how we can move forward. In order to capitalise and to maximise those possibilities, to make a more prosperous society, to be able to pay for public services, to be able to recruit those healthcare staff that we need, it's vital that we're working together. American investors are not going to invest here into a place where there's not even a government. What business needs certainty and they require stability, and they are not going to take a chance in that respect. So While there's lots of challenges, I believe we also have lots of potential and opportunity, not least in terms of the people that's here today. We have some of the best young graduates and we have an excellent education system. We have people coming out with skills that companies and businesses are looking for. And there is a brighter future to be got. And I believe working together will maximise how quickly we can get there and how effectively we can get there.
Okay. Peter, is there a vibe around Stormont this week? Is there, same question to you really, is there a bit of hope in the air?
I was just saying that actually to Colm whenever I arrived here, that it feels like there's a bit of a buzz. I've always described myself as a frustrated new MLA. I worked for Naomi for a number of years, so I know what it's like having Stormont. I gave up a full-time job and a council seat to sit in an empty room up the road, hear lots of problems from people, but not be able to propose any solutions because Stormont hasn't been sitting. So it's been a frustrating year and a half for me, knowing that there's things that I should be able to do, but I'm just not able to do them. For example, people can bring issues to me. I can write a letter off to a permanent secretary and wait for a month to get that response. I could probably write the response as the person sat in front of me, because without Stormont, there's nothing that anyone can do to sort the main issues that you've just heard there from Colm. In terms of, is there hope in the air? It feels like there's a buzz in the air. I think people know that something's coming. As a frustrated Newcastle United fan, I don't get too excited until the players signed it on the pitch. A lot can happen in politics. A lot can happen between now and Saturday. But I mean, I'm hopeful that we will sit on Saturday and that restoration will happen. But as well as that, I think our politics needs to change a little bit. There's been 7 recalls now to elect a speaker. Each of those times I voted yes for a speaker. Each of those times my vote hasn't actually been considered in terms of the election of a speaker. The way the assembly rules are set, it's a majority of unionists and a majority of nationalists need to agree in terms of the speaker, and those who are categorised into other in terms of alliance, well, along with Jerry Carroll, who's socialist, but he's seen as other. He designates as socialist, we designate as United Community. Our votes actually aren't considered in terms of how you elect the speaker. So we've always been lobbying for reform of the institutions. Stephen Farry wrote a paper about it in 1999 and sort of predicted what we're now seeing, whereby one party can walk away and the whole thing just collapses. There's that really famous clip of Jeffrey Donaldson, critical of Sinn Féin at the time, on Question Time, and he said it's reprehensible that one party with less than 25% of the vote can collapse the institutions. And I think it was Paddy Brown at one of the recalls read that out and said, there's a bit of hypocrisy here. Saoirse Eastwood famously challenged him on Question Time, and if you ever watch back on that clip, he's chugging the water as it's being read back to him in terms of his words. So we really need to address that in terms of getting our politics moving forward, because Colm mentioned there about consistency for businesses and things like that. Our current political institutions are set up that no one really knows what's going to happen. If one person walks away, the whole thing just collapses. So businesses need consistency, and I think Northern Ireland needs stable, consistent government year on, year out. This year was meant to be the first time that we were going to have something called multi-annual budgets. So we'd have 3 years where government departments were going to be able to sit and sort of plan and be strategic, whereas now, because of the collapse, we're just back to annual budgets, where people don't spend that much at the start and then frantically spend towards the end. So just a bit of stability, a bit of consistency, I think it would be the best thing for Northern Ireland.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you. Going to do something slightly different. You know who they are. You've heard where they're from. You've heard what's going on at the minute. 2 minutes in your tables, right on the tablecloth or whatever else. What's your question? Here's the thing. I want you to be able to spend those 2 minutes being political at your table and agreeing on 1, maybe 2 questions that you'd all like asked. So 2 minutes around your table. What is it that you want to ask? Write it down on a tablecloth and we'll hear some of them.